Welcome to Let's Talk Ads. We're here to push your growth marketing tips, fun and chats. Tune in, let's rock the show.
Hello, welcome to Let's Talk Ads. My name is Andre. I'm the CEO of Admiral Media, and with me today is Drew Hampton, Head of Performance Marketing at Varo Bank. Varo Bank is a huge neobank based in the US, servicing the US as far as I understood. They raised like $1 billion or something like that. Certainly have a ton of employees, huge marketing team, I would assume. But I'm very happy to have Drew here. Today we wanted to discuss the hard truths about performance marketing in the FinTech space in particular. I guess that's something super interesting for many growing FinTech apps also in Europe or elsewhere. So basically, Drew will be sharing his playbook for compliant, test-driven performance marketing. Let's see how this goes. But before we jump into this, Drew, where are you? How are you doing? How's your day starting?
Thanks. First of all, thank you for having me on. It's always a privilege. I'm very much looking forward to our discussion. Currently located in San Francisco. It is foggy as normal. There's a famous quote supposedly said by Mark Twain that the coldest winter day ever experienced was summer in San Francisco, and I can confirm that is very true. So always foggy, rarely ever hot, but it's day starting out well, and just really looking forward to this discussion.
Cool, happy to have you on board here. Tell us about you. How did you get into Varo Bank? How long are you there, head of performance marketing? What did you do before?
Yeah, so before Varo, I was the head of marketing at SKAN. I built out the user acquisition and lifecycle marketing teams, going from a team of 1 to 6, taking over creative and data, and then eventually over all of marketing. And then I took a little bit of a vacation, did a lot of traveling to South America, and then I started applying. I've been looking a lot at FinTechs, and Varo was one of the neobanks that jumped out at me, in part because they were what, I actually think we're still the only chartered neobank out there. And I really liked how they focused on the small person. I actually signed up for Varo myself 5 years prior, so I had been very interested in the company and wanted to get to, see work on the inside and also learn a lot more about FinTech. So I guess you could say the stars aligned. So I got very lucky.
Okay. And how big is the marketing team now in Varo Bank, or the let's say the performance marketing team that you are leading?
It's a small knit team, but it's about we're heavily divided, but I would say overall about 5 or 6. But we're like basically separated across a lot of orgs. At this company, we're using a lot of agencies. Previously at SPIN, as I mentioned, we had I built out a team of 6. Eventually was managing a team of 13. But as I learned at every organization I go to, the size and the structure of every marketing team differs greatly. The type of resources they want to leverage and how they want to build the teams also varies. So you always have to adapt to what they want to do. But right now it's more of a small knit team, but I sometimes like that because it gets you're exposed to a lot more and get to learn a lot more and do a lot more.
Yeah, interesting. We can dive a little bit deeper into team structures and stuff maybe on a later stage. What does, for the audience as well, what does Varo Bank really do? What is their core product? To whom do you serve?
We really try to target the people who never really had like a bank before or don't want to deal with fees. Like we are actually a free bank where you can do free deposits at CVS. You can withdraw at 50,000 different ATMs free of charge. It's all online. We don't have any brick and mortar. We have a high yield savings account. We have a secure credit building card, which means the way we have it structured is you could literally only spend the money you have in your bank. So you can't, overextend yourself. You can't overextend and get draft fees. Is really like we want to get rid of all the fees and really help the consumer build their credit score and also give them access to cash advances or line of credits for when they need it. Inc. 500 once voted us last year the top cash advance app out there. That's definitely one of our core products, along with our savings, savings, debit card, credit card, you name it. We do a lot of it.
I see. Okay. And SPIN, you've been at SPIN before. SPIN is a mobility provider, no? Like e-scooters or something?
Correct. We were, micromobility. We were an e-scooter company. We At one point, I think when I joined, we hit 60 to 85 cities across the nation. We're one of the primary scooters in several cities, including Washington, D.C. And that was, I joined at a very exciting time. It's right before COVID. We were growing massively, literally week over week. The running joke was, I've been here 2 weeks. Oh, I've been here 3 weeks. So I've been here 4 weeks. And then COVID also, we had to go through a lot of reorgs and restructuring and also reevaluate how we want to work with consumers. And we also realized the value of our product changed a lot, where we saw, people using scooters a lot more for like longer periods of time because they wanted to use that for public transit. We understood our value in the product and basically helping users having a safe way to get to where they need to go, especially for people who had to go to hospitals or like basically necessary workers. So it was a privilege to work there. They were very ethical. They always wanted to abide by doing the right thing, which is something I very much valued. I've been exposed to a lot of, let's just say, micromobility or rideshare companies where they didn't necessarily do the ethical thing. They would sue their way to get permits from different cities. We always try to work with the city and do the right thing and really help the customer. Because at the end of the day, if you're not have a happy customer, you don't have the right product.
Yeah, it's funny that you worked, especially also at the same time for a e-mobility and scooter startup, while we at Admiral had tier mobility as a client at this period of time with COVID and shutdown of mobility, basically. So I feel you.
Yeah,
when you
actually
compare
took buyout SKAN.
Yeah, absolutely. When you compare mobility marketing for mobility app and now FinTech, do you see big differences in that, or do you come back to the same channels, same mechanisms? How would you see that?
It's a great question, and it's a day and night difference in a lot of ways. So one, scooters are very much transactional. As much as we always want to do the ethical thing, a lot of it comes to what's available and where. Is that convenient for the user? Are they right there? So really want to streamline the sign-up experience and make it easy for them to take a ride when and where they need it. The channels we use are very different from our competitors, and that's one of the things I've done a lot of my career is sometimes you can't necessarily do what your competitors do. You have to zag, you have to understand what your market position was. We did focus a lot on ASA and UAC. Those are two primary channels. We're here at Varo. We actually do a lot of web-based marketing on top of mobile-based marketing. So for, I would say, over half our ad spend, we drive users to our webpage where they sign up before they download the app itself. So it's a very different flow. And also you're building a very different product where, again, we're not brick and mortar. You don't see us in the street. SPIN is blurred metal as a service. You walk down the street and go, oh, there's a scooter. There's branding right in your face. You see it all the time. So it's a really like completely different environment, completely different branding, completely different user flow. It's been really interesting kind of showing Varo, seeing the different user experiences and how to onboard users and best ways to find them and have them sign up with your product.
How come? I would guess as a banking app, the core product is the app itself. How come that half of your ad spend goes into web?
So it's a great question. So by web, most of it is still via mobile phone, but we've discovered that driving users to our like landing pages first, where they sign up on a landing page versus downloading the app and installing, has been very successful. It also allows us different targeting, whereas UAC, as I'm sure, or app campaigns, as Google now loves to call it, I still call it by UAC just because it's still just drilled into me as that. But UAC is broad, you have very limited control. It's basically you give Google some stuff and they optimize. And I remember I had to like hack their algorithm a lot at spend, where if I increased bids or budget too much spend would be moved to display or YouTube, which would be, have great CPIs, but far less like first time rider CACs, far worse. Whereas here, this way we can leverage, SEM for people who are looking for, let's say, a high savings account, line of credit, Varo Bank. So it allows us to really attract a different user, especially people who are more proactively engaged. And also the value is because we are FinTech, there are a lot, and rightfully so, limitations in the targeting we can do. So, at Spain, you're a lot more able to target by demographics and, by cities, zip, and a lot more than what you can do with FinTech because there's a history in the United States, unfortunately, where people would only want to target affluent people and offer the products to them, which ironically is not what we want to do. We want to target this consumers that have always been overlooked by the big banks. But because of that, you have to get creative and find other ways to target users. So one way is SEM, for example, where users are not necessarily, like, you're not targeting based on demographics, you're targeting based on what they're actively searching for. So much lower in the funnel. That's worked great. We've done a lot of testing with app install campaigns on Meta and also with web. And we just found that web seemed to drive much better traffic, much more better efficiency. Our cost per North Star was far superior. And even, and so it's just one of those things you learn where you always have to keep an open mind and you have to always be willing to test. Everywhere I go, just because the industry norms dictate this, does not mean that will work for your company. You have to keep an open mind, be willing to test everything, and go where the data takes you.
Wise words. Have you seen, I can just second this, especially when you say about web campaigns where you can target different users that may use different products or different features inside your app. They certainly also generate different revenues or LTVs, right? So you can steer the bidding much better compared to fully automated app campaigns where you have no clue which type of users coming in and you let Google basically decide, right?
You have a great question. And I'll say, even with mobile app advertising, if let's say you want to use like an app network like Moloco, App11 or UAC, you can run campaigns for separate products, use different signals to optimize against. So we've seen with a lot of our metrics where we built our predictive signal, which works best for more of our base core products. We've found that our early upper funnel signal works better for our lending products. So you identify what signal mix works right for each product and separate your campaigns and ad groups based off of that. So even though you can't necessarily, you don't necessarily have the granularity as you do with search or Meta, there's still a lot of viable ways where you can advertise your different products and just use the different event signals to optimize.
It's a really great workaround, actually. I mean, apart from using different creatives, different messaging, obviously, which would probably attract different users.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Using in-app events that are really sending signals back into the ad network about the different features with the different revenue parameters will hopefully train the algorithm to bring in different user types. That's a great recommendation.
Literally.
Over the time,
Yeah.
have you noticed that some channels are maybe becoming less effective? And if you have seen that, why do you think that is the case? You're in Varo Bank since 2 years now. Have you seen some channels declining in the time?
I mean, over my career, obviously, I've seen massive changes in the industry as a whole. Like, I started in display, which was a lot more DR focused when I joined. That's because the way people consumed everything was completely different. A lot of it was more web-based or desktop web and not MWeb. And I ran $1 million campaigns earlier in my career, that was tracking ROI via clicks, which is something you just don't see happen very much when you do programmatic display anymore. And on the flip side, you see app, just basically everything app kind of exploding, and just everything's changed. One with privacy, attribution, SKAN, that really changes how you target. I mean, I don't know if people remember Google sponsored promotions or Facebook back in the day. The amount of granular targeting you could do was kind of scary sometimes, where there were stories where people would basically do such a target ad. It would basically be a wedding proposal for their significant other on Facebook. So they would come across the ad, and because they could do that specific level of targeting, whereas now you can't do that. And which is a good thing too, to agree, because user privacy is paramount. As a marketer, it's a challenge. You always want to do right by the consumer. You don't want to stalk them, but you also don't want to invade them. So you have to find ways to mature. And one of the transitions we've seen over the years is privacy's completely changed the game. When iOS 14.5 was released, I remember seeing data how app install campaigns on Facebook plummeted by over 50%. And correspondingly, ASA, because it did not have to abide by SKAN, since they had their own first-party data to use to match everything, their traffic exploded on that platform. And Since then, probabilistic attribution has become a really important thing, but also that's where machine learning comes into play too. And we always saw this trend before SKAN ever came out, but with machine learning, there's only so much the human can do, and machine learning, you always want to make sure it's ethically optimizing and not taking in optimized against protective characteristics, but it can look at thousands of different data sets, trends, and everything. And so basically that's really changed the game of way you optimize. Doesn't mean you can trust it completely, because there is going to be stuff that you always want to put bumpers in. You just don't want to say target broad with this. You always need to do a lot. You have to like a event testing map, test different events. You want to try to do enhanced conversions where possible. You always want to just because something fails the first time doesn't mean it's going to fail the second time. You always have to be testing signals again downstream, what works well for what product. There's always optimizations to be done because the industry is always changing. So I guess then the too long don't read is basically privacy and attribution have really changed the game. The industry is already moving more towards machine learning optimization, but I think that privacy has really accelerated that shift because targeting, especially for fintechs and whatnot, is a lot more limited now too.
Yeah, 100%. How do you consider you're hearing what you're saying about all the event testings and stuff? You're probably having a very high marketing budget. Considering that there's a lot of startups out there that are just starting in whatever category, maybe in the fintech niche, what would be your recommendation to those folks? How to get started, basically? Like which channel should they choose in the first place? Where can they get the best learnings? And which type of attribution should they plug in?
It's a great question. I mean, I think in general, any marketer should always start with its base 2 products, even if it's app-based. Again, it depends on the structure of your campaigns, but Google and Meta are necessities to a degree. Those are consistently usually the top performers everywhere. Now, with the proliferation of app networks and app DSPs, that has really or mobile DSPs, has really changed the game. But it really kind of starts with, all right, what is your product? Who's your audience? Where do they reside? What is your onboarding flow? And you have to understand, what are you offering your customers? And again, you want to build a relationship with your customers. You have to understand, what is the value of your product to your customers? From there, you can understand, all right, what then are the right events to optimize to? And, sometimes you want to start with a day 0 event, something high funnel and monitor downstream metrics, but you need to understand what your North Stars are too. So it's a really complicated answer because there is no right answer. It's really dependent on your product, your space, your industry, and who your audience is and where they reside. But I would say for people getting into this, UAC or Google, Facebook are keys. Apple search ads, I've seen mixed success with over the years. Again, it depends on the product, the way it works. And then, AppLovin is one of the main players out there. If you talk to any mobile advertiser, they're like the main, just look at their stock, the way it's grown over the last 2 years. There's a reason for it. They have generated a lot of great performance. But the machine learning is always improving, always changing. So I would say, again, who's your audience? What is your product for? What's the value to them? What events really dictate what shows ROI? Start optimizing from there.
Mm-hmm. Would you recommend founders to run their campaigns themselves at the beginning before they start hiring a performance expert or something?
It's a great question. And like a lot of my questions, it's going to be nuanced because it depends. Like there's so many variables that come into play. One of my challenges is that I always look at everything as permutation. It depends on this, and this, produces this outcome. But I would say if you're a founder, maybe run a campaign in the beginning just so you understand how it works, or if you want to learn more about your product and how the audience responds. I think depending on what your budget is and what your goals are, maybe onboard an agency in the beginning or hire an experienced marketer that can manage a couple agencies and run some channels directly, or a contractor. So it really depends on, if you're a founder, what is your goal? If you want to do marketing, what is it because you want to scale right away? What is your bandwidth? As a founder, you're going to be spread so thin, you want to be able to focus on what the key areas. So where does your focus need to lie in order to succeed? If you have to really focus on the core product and the engineering aspect and the fundraising aspect, then maybe better to bring on a contractor agency or even in-house person to start building that marketing function and managing that and overseeing it. So again, to the founders out there, I don't envy it. I've worked at a lot of startups. There's no silver bullet. It really just depends on where your skill set is and where, at the end of the day, where you want to prioritize, because that's what everything comes down to. Marketing, founding, everything, you have to prioritize.
And I guess a lot also may depend on your network, the people that surround you and what recommendations they give. Meaning, is there maybe someone who has already some experience with an agency, with another expert, and good recommendation can obviously save you a lot of time and money versus try and error and then just hiring random people, right?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, that's a given, and I should have expanded on it. And thank you for calling it out, because your network is your most valuable thing. That's one thing I've definitely learned in my career is listen to your network, listen to the trends. Salespeople will tell you everything and try to sell you the moon. You need to really listen to what people's experiences are and what they've seen. So tap into that network and then see how people have managed their situation. For me personally, it also depends on what you're trying to do. So I do value bringing someone on independently if you're want to grow something to manage that part, especially people who have a lot of connections within the marketing industry who can really help you grow. But if you're a founder that has a great marketing background, then you don't necessarily need that. So again, it's all relative, but it's a great call out.
No, absolutely. Obviously, you have a lot of experience managing performance marketers and marketing teams. What is an underrated skill every performance marketer should learn immediately, apart from playing with AI?
Yeah, that's like the de facto. I'm thank you for excluding that. Honestly, communication, delivering results, learning how to communicate with it externally and internally is something that to this day I see people struggle with. I cannot tell you the number of meetings I sit in where people just do this massive data dump. There's no they verbally go over takeaways and you're just trying to digest all this data. You really need to learn how to kind of set up the deck so that people can digest the information. You have to remember, one, less is more. I always like to go with basically one, have the key takeaway, like a headline. What did we learn? All right, so basically 3 key takeaways. What did we learn? What are the blockers? What are the next steps? If you have a lot of data, highlight the key data that you really want to call out. Remove additional data. The appendix is your best friend. And that's how you can really get away with this less is more. Because my biggest issue in my career was I always basically show everything, but it became overwhelming and saturates the user's brain or your audience's brain. So stuff that in the appendix, just basically streamline what you really need in the key points. And if the question comes up, boom, go right to the appendix and you can address it. So basically you always want to set also call out what the goals are, what certain acronyms are, understand who your audience is. You have to really go in and go basically, present to your audience and narrate to them so they can understand the story and then they can better digest what they've learned, what the learnings are, what the blockers are, what the challenges are, and what the next steps are. So I would say really learn how to present that data to your peers and anybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. I put a lot of time and effort into my team to actually help them to communicate their results very well to the clients, obviously. At the same time, I want them to save time on the preparation work for presentations and stuff, right? Because there's nothing less productive than building up a presentation. You are basically just screenshotting from a gazillion of tools to then further explain it to the client in a meeting. And there's just a million questions coming up from that, right? So what you're saying, put as much as possible in an appendix and dense it down to the 3 major bullet points. I think that's a big win for both sides in the end of the day. So really good point, Drew.
I was gonna say real quick, I'd call it to the future leaders, give them a template, provide an example so they can reference it and go over it with them so they can start building that habit. You have to educate them, teach them, because sometimes they'll maybe be too junior to understand. So give them examples, give them a template to work off of. I fully agree because it's a key necessity.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Can you share a big campaign success with Varo Bank? I guess you have a lot of regulations and constraints in FinTech where you have to pay a lot of attention what you are allowed to promote and how you communicate certain features of the product. Do you remember a huge success campaign that was still fulfilling these limitations? And how did you get to this point that the campaign was so successful?
Yeah, there are a couple. One, I learned quickly that just because industry, like your vendor recommendations or industry recommendations are the commonplace. So for example, UGC ads are, everybody tells us, are the best way to go, especially for companies like AppLovin. We discovered, though, we kept an open mind, discovered that Product Illustrate ads perform far better. Everybody talks about how much better video ads are on Meta versus stack ads. We've noticed that our stack ads do far better than video ads, which also means we can free up creative resources because we don't have to develop that as much. So you have to understand where your place is and always be willing to test. So one of the learnings was basically, just because industry says these are the best practices, does that mean it's the best practices for you? We're a bank. We're competing for an audience. There's going to be a lot of other companies competing for that same audience. So therefore, the CPMs are going to be a lot higher. Competition is going to be a lot more significant for those video spots on Meta. And you may not succeed as much. Or if you do, you need to really increase your costs, which hurts your efficiency in the back end. So you need to understand where your place is and how to optimize within those margins. I would say also event testing. As I mentioned, like predictive model test, like we built out predictive model, and I did a lot of event testing when I joined Varo, like a significant amount. And I was told to make a focus on just testing the predictive North Star model. And I did, but I had a hunch too that for a couple of our key products, that upper funnel signal would do better. So I set up an A/B test in Meta where I structured it, basically testing our two most popular products, and then testing an early upper, like a day zero signal versus our PNS North Star signal, predictive North Star signal. I quickly discovered that the upper funnel signal performed far better. And I brought that information to the CPO, and we just debated and had a lot of theories why. So we leaned really much into the upper funnel signal for these two key core products, especially both on Meta and Google, which has made a drastic difference in performance. Conversely, for our other non-lending products, we discovered the predictive North Star signal actually did far better for, let's say, our credit building product or our banking product or a savings product. It did a lot better there. So even though I've heard a lot of people say, well, Drew, let's just do this day zero signal, it's working best for everything. I'm going, well, based on this data, we're seeing this signal work best for these core products. So why the takeaway is have an event testing roadmap, always be testing, looking at your metrics. You want to make sure you give the algorithms enough data on a daily basis to optimize, and always look for new signals to test and optimize against. So I think that is going to be, it's absolute paramount that you just don't accept what your North Star is or what the signal is, that you're always iterating and testing new signals to see what optimizes better downstream and produces the most efficient revenue.
Can we dive a little bit deeper into this event testing roadmap? I'm very interested. I'm assuming you have, 6 different events coded into your whatever, SKAdNetwork, Attribution, MMP, whatsoever. And then you have your campaign set up in Meta. And how do you go about event testing now? Do you run them in parallel? Do you make an A/B test and just optimize for, purchase versus sign up? Or do you test them in different time periods? What is a good recommendation here?
For me, unless you're really budget constrained, I always prefer A/B testing. So using Meta's A/B testing platform where it'll split out the traffic. So targeting the same audience, because if you test different months even, we've noticed at Varo that the industry is very seasonal, where certain months perform great, other months not so much. So you really want to normalize. If you're going to do a test, you need to normalize as much as you can, control what you can, and really isolate to the core things you want to test. So in this case, if you're testing event signal, you want to duplicate the campaign. You want to set one campaign to basically do this signal, one campaign to do this signal at the same time. Again, this is where I'm happy Facebook. I can't remember when they finally developed it, but it took forever to develop that A/B testing tool. But it's a necessity in order to learn and understand. Now, unfortunately, with Google, USC, you can't really do an A/B test. You can't split out the traffic. but you can still run different signal tests at the same time with similar budgets. You have to, I think any performance marketer will tell you, data is never perfect. Sometimes it's a bit of an art. Like there's always going to be noise. There's always going to be variances. There's always going to be reasons. Things are always changing. What worked yesterday may not work tomorrow, but you have to take the hand you're given. And so basically learn to kind of optimize when you can't do a split test. What can you control and optimize against that? Monitor different KPIs. Don't just have one primary KPI. That KPI can be very misleading. I think every performance marketer has been very excited about these great performance numbers, only to discover they weren't good numbers. That maybe you guys had view attribution installed when your engineering team didn't. I told you it was not, they were excluding all view through. Maybe there was fraud. Like there could be a lot of different reasons. So you always want to have secondary and third KPIs that you triangulate to determine success. But it's an art. It's half an art, half science, I think. And I'm always data focused, but I also realize that your years of experience build up to try to tell you what the learnings are. But that's why you have to keep an open mind, always be testing, retesting, reconfirming. And so I would say, again, control what you can for every test. If you're going to, like, if your goal is to test a product, use the same events. And then let's say you want to test two different products and use the same event. You see, okay, this product, this event, this product did better. Okay, well, maybe for this product, this event will do better. Then test maybe this product with event B and this product with event A simultaneously to see what works. Like, control what you can, learn from you can, iterate, optimize, and keep always learning.
Talking about the team itself, what is your secret source of motivating the team and, let's say, developing kind of a performance-oriented culture within the team, including creative team maybe? I mean, do you have something there?
Yeah, it's a great question. When I've come in, I've always made sure to install a testing culture. Anybody that knows me knows I'm highly analytical. Always joke my middle brother got all the creative genes in the family. He's a VP at a boutique UX company and more of a data Excel guru. I do understand creatives and I love working with the creative team. You have to give them guidance too on what works and what's learning. But basically, I would say there's two parts. So one, do you want approach on building the team and motivating the team? I can talk about a lot of the tangibles, but let's just and how to really manage your team. But to your question, I'm going to focus more on the analytical portion. Identify this, if you're coming in, identify the skill sets of each person. Who's hyper analytical, who's more strategic, who's more creative. Understand how to kind of help them grow in their weak areas and grow in their strength areas. So one of the things I did at Spin is one of my LCM marketers really wanted to get more analytically involved. I sat down with him for a while, Tom, how to use pivot tables. I would then give him some interview examples I generated in the past for him to practice on, and then give him small tests to kind of practice that, again, that muscle to grow, and then say, hey, sign for LinkedIn Premium, take a couple courses, we'll comp it. And so that helped really build his his analytical muscle. And then also I would work with someone who's a lot more creative focused, who didn't really like working with data. I was like, okay, what can I do to get them the right data they need in order to work with the creative team? So stripping out all the intimidation part and delivering what they could understand so they can work with the creative team on building out a creative roadmap, giving the creative team feedback. So in the day, it comes down to understanding the strengths and weaknesses of every individual, developing the right rapport with everyone and the right way to communicate and, and basically exchange that knowledge base from the data aspect to the creative aspect so they know what to work on. And you can't just tell the creative team, this worked, this didn't. You need to maybe go, hey, here's the data, what the data shows, and then work with them, collaborate on ideas. I've learned through my time, at my current company, for example, most, not all, but most lifestyle ads just don't work well for us. We've come up with a lot of ideas, but we're always testing it as 10% of our budget or whatnot. But we consistently see that, okay, the metrics say this, so let's focus on iterating on this, and this, and grow from there, and then show them the data to kind of prove it. And then again, if you have that in between person, between your performance marketing team, the creative team, work with them to help them tell the story to the creative team, because maybe they'll be much more well-versed in how to interact with the creative team than someone like yourself.
Thanks for sharing. I actually got reminded of a similar situation I had a long time ago with another team member where I also identified she was hired to run as a performance marketer, but I quickly felt like she's really not liking the job. And I had a long conversation with her and figured she was put into this kind of role by her parents. And then actually she wanted to be a creative person. And I said, okay, let's give it a shot. Here's Photoshop for you. And she basically developed into one of the best designers. Like, it's crazy. Complete career shift.
That's great. Yeah. And you work with your employees to understand their strengths and where they want to work and help enable them. And it's cool. I mean, to your point, so few leaders do what you did there. And you're missing out if you do that. Your employees are your greatest resource. You want to set them up for success and find out how you can, if they're not the right fit for that one specific niche, maybe they can be fit in a different way. So I love what you did there. And that's a great example.
Yeah, 100%. It's always better to reposition people, give them different tasks than just really letting them go, right? Because they already understood your product. They are in the team environment, in the culture. It's never great to let people go. Rather, try to find different responsibilities for them, and they might thrive in there, right? Let's jump back maybe to attribution. How do you see Apple search ads versus, meaning how do you see SKAdNetwork versus Apple search ads using a different attribution model? How should marketers look at data comparing Facebook results versus Apple search ads results?
It's kind of hard, especially with like Facebook and Google, because you have to use SKAN. Although I think I heard recently that Facebook just literally enabled probabilistic attribution. So that's a big game changer for Facebook's end. I remember at Spin where on Google UAC, we ran an iOS campaign. Obviously, all we could track were installs. Just because we couldn't track everything else and we didn't have SKAN installed, didn't mean it wasn't successful. So you need to identify like kind of what your proxies are going to be. SKAN could be great, but you have to understand, first work with your data team. How is the data structured? I would say I've been at several companies where, unfortunately, the way all their points set up with each other, it's all done at the user level and aggregates up. Therefore, it would be hard for them to integrate SKAN and would take a lot of learning, like human learning hours. So I think that does help me lean more into I would say vendors who offer probabilistic attribution. And that helps a lot because that gives you a lot more insights into what is working. But when you do use SKAN, make sure you have it set up and configured the right way. So you're pulling in the right data and you know what it means. And also know what it doesn't mean and what it's not telling you. No, it's going to be more macro. It's not going to give you the nuanced information you're looking for. So make sure if you're using SKAN, you go in with a plan. And you're structured and you know what the data is going to look like, how the results are going to look, and how to read it. If you go in without plan, you're going to just be spinning your wheels. So I would say, SKAN is definitely a challenge. And it's not my favorite thing in the world. I don't know any marketer or data person that's a big fan of SKAN. We're actually in the middle of implementing it at our company right now because like a lot of our data attribution's done at the user level on the back end. Therefore, aggregating data from a SKAN point of view is going to be a lot more difficult. Even with SKAN 4.0, it's not really available on many products, and that's like going to be a lot more valuable than SKAN 3. So, that does lean in. Again, you have to understand what your goals are, what your superiors will settle for, what proxies you can use, and what opportunities are available, and what workarounds can be used to kind of, again, create proxy metrics if you can't do direct attribution. That's why I'm a big fan of MMPs. Well, for many reasons, I do feel they are a necessity, but one of them is the attribution, being able to work with the vendor, saying a probabilistic modeling, and be able to kind of understand like who is driving what, macro, or who is driving what, so you can analyze how to optimize your campaigns. So where possible, use probabilistic attribution, and then if you have to, use SKAN. But most of the vendors out there, especially for mobile app networks and DSPs, probabilistic attribution is a viable alternative.
Yeah, I see that. Basically, a multi-layered answer to the question is to the question of is Apple basically unfair with SKAdNetwork? I guess we can all
I
agree
personally
that
think
they
it's
are.
very, yeah, sorry. I do fully agree with that. I think I mentioned earlier where Branch released this data, this graph in 2021 that showed percent of spend from Facebook app install campaigns and then ASA campaigns. And it was insane. It was like a 50% drop. Maybe I'm over exaggerating, but it was significant. And then Apple skyrocketed because Apple was able to use their first party data to, because again, it's their own data to attribute everything. How they got away with that not being an anti-privacy issue, I don't know. It was literally only last month that they actually implemented SKAN on their own product. Also, I was always been frustrated with ASA because it is a very limited service in terms of what you can do to optimize. It's improved over the years, but it's still been very limited. But it doesn't mean it's not valuable. It was a huge success at SPAN. We were able to leverage it in ways, and it was one of our main sources of revenue. So understand where it works best. I'm not saying not to use it. Every company is going to has their own monopolies. Google, I'm a big fan of Google, but let's be honest, Google's got a monopoly on SEM, and the courts have been telling Google that too. So every company tends to have an unfair advantage. So while you may be bitter about it, it doesn't change the reality. And you have to realize, every company is going to do what they can, try and make money. You have to work around it, work with them. And if complain about it's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, it's not going to change your job. That's true. You mentioned you're a big fan of MMPs. How do you see their future? I mean, recently there's a lot of layoffs going on. Some of my clients are implementing SKAdNetwork directly and are basically bypassing MMPs on the iOS side of things. Some even have built their own attribution system on Android. How do you see this going forward?
It's a great question. I personally think MMPs are a necessity, especially the way everything's going forward. We can get into kind of like the secondary values of MMPs, but the primary thing is while maybe smaller companies are able to use SKAN or use Android attribution, that may not be valuable for long. Or if you want to scale, that's not necessarily going to be a viable solution at all. I know there have been a lot of layoffs in the industry, but also from what I've seen over the last year and a half, there's been a huge price war. I have a lot of friends in the industry, and I would say AppsFire was known for really increasing their costs exorbitantly. Like people were getting really frustrated, and competitors were coming in with contracts literally 60% less. And to the point where now AppsFire is dropping their costs. So there's a price war. So people are also cutting out overhead where they can. And my guess is part of the layoffs have to do with that. Am I positive of that? No, it's more of a hypothesis, but I'm sure there's more to it. But I think MMPs are always going to be a necessity. If you want to be able to scale, you need to be able to directly and seamlessly integrate with several vendors at once. You want to be able to track, you want to be able to track several events at once. You also want to have, there's a lot of tools such as cost aggregation, creative aggregation, audience building. There's so much value to MMP that even though the costs can be extreme, again, to those people trying to look for MMP, talk to at least 3 of them and negotiate. That's the best piece of feedback I can give you. Even though the costs are extreme, the benefits, in my opinion, far outweigh the downfalls. And if you want to build out your own attribution and everything, that's great, but just know that everything's always changing. Maybe Android's going to start moving more to a probabilistic model too, in which case, or something similar to SKAN, so in which case that's going to change what you build out. So you have to understand where you are in the industry. More importantly, where do you want to go? So again, if you're, to your clients that have done what you mentioned, it may be the best fit for them. And I would say every company should look at what is best for them, but more importantly, where do they want to be in a year and what do they need to get there?
If I was a owner of an app and someone would suggest to build the own attribution system somehow, I would be extremely afraid of all the maintenance work that comes with it, right? Everything breaks at some point, and you have to rebuild, change, add a parameter, connect another vendor, whatsoever, right? So suddenly you have a bigger developer team for something that's not your core business. I'm not sure if that's the right decision. But yeah, that's a different story.
And we haven't even talked about all the secondary values of these MMPs, such as fraud protection and whatnot. So There's so much value to them, and I agree with you 100%. And I'm more than happy to talk to anybody that is thinking about doing it internally, but I would always recommend in general, except for unique edge cases, leverage an MMP, especially if you're going to do something at scale.
Makes your life easier, that's for sure. Drew, this was a very insightful talk. Thanks for coming today and sharing your thoughts on the hard truths of performance marketing. To the audience, if you want to have a chat with Drew and get some insights, some recommendations, I'm sure he's available. I guess through LinkedIn is the easiest way to connect.
Absolutely.
We'll put your profile there in the show notes. And otherwise, thanks for listening. Put your questions in the comments. Otherwise, happy to respond. And thanks for listening. That was Let's Talk Ads. Cheers.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
We're here to boost your growth, marketing tips, fun and chats. Tune